Talking with
Ric Viers
from
Blast Wave Effects.
out of Detroit, Michigan.
Yes, Detroit, Michigan.
Excellent. All right, talk about the book. You have a book here, and tell us about what the purpose of the book is and how we can learn more about sound effects.
Well, the book is called The Sound Effects Bible. It came out in the fall and is published by Michael Weesey Productions. And the idea of the book is to teach how sound effects are created. And the focus of it is very much educational. It's written in such a way that if the reader knows very little about sound, they should still be able to, within the first chapters, understand the science of sound, how microphones work, and recorders, and each chapter kind of builds on itself. And then later in the book, we get into how to create your own build your own Foley stage, how to build your own editing suite, how to calibrate monitors, and then finally how to do actual sound design for things from anything from a car crash to a werewolf to earthquakes, etc.
So I got to know, why would you give up this valuable information when you have a huge sound effects library over here?
Well, to date, I've produced over 175,000 sound effects in about 160 professional libraries that are out there. I've worked with every major publisher of sound effects there is, and I kind of got to a point where I really felt responsible to kind of pass this information along. I was really disappointed when I first got started. There was no book, no resource whatsoever on how to make sound effects. And so after about 12 years of doing this, I still couldn't find a resource. And I said, somebody needs to pass this information along, and that was the driving purpose behind the book.
Well, then how did you get started? If there was no guide for you, was it just trial and error?
It was all mistakes, and which is and I'm very open in the book. It's not. This is not a book on how to do it because I know how to do it right. This is a book on this is all the things I did wrong and figured out. All right, this is a better way of doing this. So the idea of the book is empowerment. It's here's what I've learned. Take this, run with it, create something different, and I guess at the end of the day, I want someone to be able to walk away with the book and be able to create sound effects better than I've done. That's kind of the goal.
Mistakes are one of the greatest forms of invention, anyway. So it must have been fun. What's one of the best sound effects you've made that you never thought you'd be able to do?
Wow, that's a hard question when you've got this many sounds. I would have to say probably some of the science fiction and horror are kind of my favorite genres because they're all hyper realistic. A lot of the stuff that we're dealing with it doesn't really exist, unless you believe in werewolves or UFOs. So that's the kind of the fun stuff for me because I can create. It's an open palette. I can do whatever I want, and so I would say, things like dinosaurs and creatures like that, and spacecraft and alien weapons and things like that. Those are always the fun sounds to create.
How about some of the horror sounds? I mean, some of the the fleshy sounds. Are they difficult, fun, and what kind of materials do you use?
With the horror stuff, I really tried to go from everything from a slasher film, monster creature, to psychological and spiritual. Typically, when I would sit down to create a library of something specific, like a horror library, I'll go out and I'll rent a bunch of films and kind of just get inspired with the images. Sometimes I'll listen to the soundtrack, sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll turn the volume off and just kind of watch the images and go, okay, now how would I tackle that? What would I come up with? And, as far as horror, once it gets into the creature slasher stuff, is a lot of vegetables that end up at the brutalness of my sledgehammers and knives and things that we go after them with, so, yeah.
What's your favorite sound to make?
Oh, I guess the most calming sound I've recorded is rain on a car from the interior. I find it it's like a weird thing, but I find that very just relaxing, I guess. Also, rain on a windshield from the interior perspective. Those kinds of things are kind of cool. But I like getting into the big stuff. I love crashes. I love destruction. I love things where, you go to a junkyard and record a bunch of stuff. You come back to the Foley and you record a bunch of stuff, and you end up with like 120 sounds that you mix together to create one sound effect. Those are the ones where it's like, okay, now this is worth it. I'm creating a twister that's terrorizing a house. So there's like a whole host of elements, from everything from wind to crash noises and creaks and all that sorts of things. So that's when you can really kind of jump at it and just go nuts.
So how much of it is Foley? How much of it is modulation by digital?
I typically try to stay old school with it. I typically try to use real-world sources. I'm a big fan of Ben Burtt, who's the godfather of sound design, did Star Wars and Raiders and all that stuff. And so as tempting as it is to just jump for like electronic sounds or a keyboard, I'm really hesitant to do that. I only do that when it's like really necessary. But even electronic sounds and spaceship sounds, I still try to, as best I can, to record real world organic sounds and then play with them with plugins. But plugins certainly help, and they do have their place. And I do like doing completely electronic stuff, but there's something to be said about somebody's oohing and ahhing about a creature sound, and that it was really came from a piece of styrofoam that you scraped against the floor, and then you played with it, and then now it sounds like a pterodactyl coming at you.
At one of our stations, I remember we spent hours trying to figure out how to best represent a brick being dropped, and we actually got a brick and dropped it, and it didn't sound like a brick dropping, and it ended up being a phone book being hit with a hammer. So it's amazing how some of the things organically don't turn around to be the things that you actually use. Do you find that true?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I talk about this in my book. The best way to record sound is to listen with your ears and not with your eyes. So just because it's the actual real-world source doesn't mean it's going to be the best source. And just because it looks interesting doesn't mean it's going to sound interesting. And so a lot of times the most low-tech props turn out to be the winners, and the coolest sounds. And things I find personally that things that are brand new don't sound as good as the things that are like 20 and 50 years old. And they're kind of worn in, so there's a little noise to them, and a little creak and a little give, and you can get better characteristics out of those kinds of sounds.
So how do you catalog for the ones that you sell? How do you catalog all your sounds into categories, and how specific do you get?
Well, Blast Wave Effects, which is our HD sound effects library, it's got over 32,000 sounds. All the material has been recorded in the last 3 years, so it's all fresh and brand new material. When we sat down, we knew how big the library was going to go, and we're not even close to where we're going to be. We knew that cataloging was huge. So we do as best as we can to, we put in the category anything that's associated to the sound that we think, but then we also have to think for the end user, because we might call it a whoosh, somebody else might call it a swipe or something else. So we try to put in as many useful keywords as we can, and we use thesauruses and stuff. We have our own search engine that comes with our hard drive products that allows you to audition by simply just touching the name of the file, and you can drag it from there right into Pro Tools or whatever you're using right from our search engine. And so it's designed and built with a thesaurus, so it tries to help fill in the blanks between what we thought the sound should be called and what the end user might actually try to search for that.
Very cool. Thanks for talking to us. I appreciate it. Again, Blastwave FX, Ric Viers, thank you very much for talking with us. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.